This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast. And I am beyond excited to introduce to our community today somebody that I've actually known. I dread to think how many years it is. It's possibly heading for about 15 years since we first met. This is David Jenkins, and he's the owner and founder of Vertical Advantage and Nurture Talent. And he's coming all the way from, is it London you're in? Down south somewhere?
Yeah, based in London Bridge.
Oh, there you go. Well, welcome to the channel today. How are you, David?
I'm great. I'm really, really good. I was on holidays last week, so just getting back into the swing of things.
Lovely. Final push. As we record this in October 2021, we're all sort of throwing ourselves through the final quarter of this year, and it's certainly been a very roller coaster year, but hopefully one that we're all experiencing success and joy for. So for those who aren't yet familiar with your businesses, do you want to give us a brief introduction as to what Vertical Advantage and Nurture Talent actually do?
Yeah, sure. Vertical Advantage has been going for 9 years. We're a specialist recruitment company, mainly based around the FMCG and consumer sector. So we work with across 3 main areas: supply chain and procurement, sales and marketing, and e-commerce and digital. So it's all with kind of brands from, you know, large businesses like Nestlé's, Unilever's, through to SME brands. But we also work with a lot of consultancies who work within and kind of marketing agencies who work within that space as well, a lot within the digital side. And we're doing a lot with kind of marketplace platforms, Amazon, et cetera, eBay. So we work in those kind of key areas. In that business, we've got 15, 16 people. And then Nurture Talent is a business that we kind of incubated initially within Vertical Advantage and then launched in April of this year, which essentially goes into scale-ups, growth businesses, or companies that want to open up an office in a particular location and are doing a batch of hiring, and they don't want to use the traditional recruitment method. They prefer to have an in-house recruiter working on their behalf for 6, 9, 12 months and pay on a monthly basis as opposed to pay traditional recruitment fees, and we cover everything.
Wow, so it's like an RPO model, really.
A mini RPO model that you can kind of turn on and turn off as and when you need it. It's more cost effective, but it's more of an embedded kind of service.
Absolutely wonderful intro, and far better than if I'd have tried to do it in a clunkier way. And I love it when I see any company that partners the FMCG market. I just think, God, it must just be so exciting to work with, like you say, reputable brands that we've all got in our cupboards, but those that are up and coming as well. Which is your most exciting sort of new thing that you think we should all know about? What products should we all be buying?
Oh, do you know what? There's a business that we've been helping recently called Quinola.
Okay.
And they are like the story behind the brand. It's only a 7-person business. Really, really interesting. It's super, super healthy, but super, super ethical as well. And we were introduced to them via a VC business called Mission Ventures. And Mission Ventures are all about improving the health of children and reducing child obesity. So they only invest in SME brands that are like really, really kind of, it's all about the kind of the health side of things. And they've done some joint ventures. They did a joint venture with Warburton's. So Warburton's are now investing in loads and loads of like bread-based products that are all about kind of health. So he's just getting into this world of SMEs that are all about health, and it's really, really, really interesting. So yeah, you know, it's really interesting. So I was involved in hiring a really, really senior role for Nespresso in the last quarter, but then also you go and you deal with these guys, and it's a totally different challenge. So yeah, pretty interesting. Quinola.
Right, we'll make sure we try and tag them on this post, because I know that this isn't what our podcast is actually about. So the episode isn't about food or drink or anything like that, but I'm passionate about anything that gets us all eating healthier, because I love food. As I finish one meal, I'm always thinking about the next meal, and I'm anyone that knows me, I'm super, super healthy. Don't get me wrong, I do like a nice bar of chocolate every now and again, but I just think any brand that is going to help create healthier choices for everybody, including children, wonderful things. And I'm all about the sustainability and the ethical side. So that's brilliant. So we're going to talk today, because obviously you and I have known each other, just to put some context around it. You had taken on the role of director for Quest, the leading fashion retail recruitment company. And I'd already had a great relationship with them. And then you came into Manchester and we were just like, wow, you know, great office, great vibe. And we partnered on a number of people. We won't mention them because it might be
Yeah.
but we built up a great relationship, and we've always stayed in touch. And that's really how, David and I've always, kept in support of each other and what we've done with our own businesses. But when I approached David to come on the podcast, one of the things we talked about is that, with our audience, and as you're listening to this now, you sat there, you might very well be a leader of a company like David. You might be, running your own small to medium-sized business. You might be, heading up a huge division in a global business, or you might be a recruiter. And I get a lot of messages from recruiters who have recently started their journey, those that are thinking, one day I want to run my own business. And I think, to put it very bluntly, I think David wants to cut through the bullshit of the brilliant bits of being a leader, and actually almost like a confessional. So have I pitched that right, David?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I guess, look, I listened to some of the recruitment podcasts that, and I think they're brilliant. I think it's great to hear stories of MDs and owners and founders, but at times it just becomes like somebody on their soapbox, just, waxing lyrical about their business and how great they are and how great their career's been. And that's, that's fantastic for those people. But actually, from my position and from where I am, when I come on to this kind of a conversation, I'd love to try and just provide some help, because I suppose the context of my career is a little bit different to other more traditional recruitment MDs' careers, in terms of a couple of the turns that I've taken, some good, some bad. And maybe that some of those things that I could talk about might be able to help people, as depending on where they are in that journey.
And that really resonates with me. And I think one of the things that certainly, when I've had feedback on how I position myself, particularly during 2020, actually, was that I shared a lot of vulnerability. I gave a lot of insight into what was going on in my head. The fact that I was scared quite a lot of 2020, wasn't sure which way the business would go. And I think that I was possibly saying things that other leaders were scared to say, because you don't want to show that you were, feeling vulnerable. So I love that. It really does resonate with me. So, okay, I'm just going to pick up on something you said there. Your journey hasn't been a typical one. So give us a potted elevator pitch history.
Okay, so I did 7 years from graduate to director level in a retail and consumer recruitment business. And the business went from 12 to 80 people in that 7-year period. I'd love to say it was all down to me. It definitely wasn't. It was an amazing business, really, really great people, predominantly perm. By the director level role, I had a team across 3 offices of 20 people, and I was sitting on a board. And when I sat on that board as a minority shareholder, I couldn't believe that it was that some of the things that we were talking about were the right things. And I'd stopped my learning journey, and I didn't realize, as I kind of was going on that 7-year journey, that I should have been learning certain things that I wasn't learning. And when I got to that board level, I was kind of like, oh, is this it? Is this how the company should be run? Is this what it is? So when that stopped, I was like, okay, this, I'm earning well. I've got a nice place. I'm on a good journey. But if I continue on this, I can't see how it's going to change or how I'm going to evolve. So I started to think about what the other options were. I ended up taking some investment and investing some of my own money and setting up a brand from scratch with a private equity business called Hamilton Bradshaw, which was James Cahn's VC vehicle. And brought a team. We set up that business, scaled. And I think my 2 main priorities in that business were learning and cash. So I wanted to continue to earn, but it didn't matter that I was, I didn't have to earn uber amounts, but I knew that what I was building and scaling will ultimately lead to some kind of point in the future where there would be an exit, and I, go off and buy a small Caribbean island or something like that. And didn't quite happen that way. And then coming out of that, I then felt like I'd learned enough that I could then go and set up my own business and my own brand. So I did that for about 2.5, 3 years. And then I had a year out of the market where I was, under very, very heavy restrictions. And I guess I did a lot of kind of planning strategy, did some consulting work, and then I built the businesses. And then rising from Vertical Advantage, we've built Nurture as well. So I guess that's the potted history. And I think it's that path, I guess, of learning, as a solo kind of owner, but also as a private equity backed MD. And then from grad to director level, I suppose, as you work back, that I think I've had different experiences that others might not have done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and obviously I'm not going to impart any confidentiality or break any confidentiality here, but we do get a lot of people that are coming to us who are probably sat where you were sat after the 7 years, in a senior role, maybe not quite on the board, but thinking, is this it? Are these the people I'm going to be learning from? And I think that is actually quite a common thing that, if you grow with a business, and I love organic growth. I love hearing stories where people have progressed. I think it's really attractive for attracting new talent into the business, particularly. But I actually think that does resonate quite well. But, so what would your words of caution be? So if you could go back to that David now, and you were sat there thinking, right, not a case of I can do this better, but a case of, is this it? What if you could pause in time there, what would you maybe have done differently, or what would you have advised yourself to do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not a massive believer in, like, to me, yesterday's kind of news, it's kind of gone in the past. And I'm not a massive believer in rolling back the clock, because I think when I made that move into do the VC backed business, the learning was incredible. So I did work, and I was mentored by James, and I did get exposure to incredible people. So I learned a huge amount. I think the first learning there is as a experienced recruiter, director in a recruitment firm, manager in a recruitment firm, if you're taking on investment, you're not a lawyer, you're not an M&A expert, you're not a corporate finance person. So if you're going to do that, you need expert advice, really. And I was advised, we were advised, but absolute expertise. And when you think about it, you need to think about the realities of some of the things that you're kind of agreeing with, and you need to think about the what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? And you need to ask those questions, and you need to get some real security of certain things kind of down on kind of paper and in legal form. So I think that's the first one. I think the second one is that there were different, particularly, look, that was 2008, 2009. And these days, the opportunities and the ways for recruitment owners and new recruitment owners to learn are so much greater than they were. And there's lots of, back then, there wasn't as many non-execs. There was, APSCO and REC wasn't really as prevalent. It wasn't, there wasn't as many people who were consultants who've been there and done it. There was a few kind of people kind of working in that kind of marketplace. Yeah. But I suppose without LinkedIn, it was very difficult to find them, and very difficult to identify who they were for a guy who'd only worked for one business for 7 years, based out of Hammersmith. I didn't have that broad recruitment network. But now you can find them. So actually, I think if you're going to go and do it, you need to, and I have them now, right? I've got a guy who's a brilliant MD of a accountancy firm, specifically recruitment companies, and they work with 30, 40 different recruitment brands called Star, and they are amazing. Paul, who's the MD, is a really, really great advisor. I've got 2 non-execs for the 2 businesses I got. So even with my experience, I still need that advice and that external advice. So I think if you're going to go and do it, and you want to get that learning, starting off early with either a really, really good mentor who you've worked with, or just going and spending 500 quid, 700 quid a month from a fairly early stage, once you start to build in some revenue, to get that advice, is worth its weight in gold, particularly in year 1 and year 2.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, so the learn that I've taken from this is, first of all, do your due diligence. And like you say, that it is like shopping in a sweetie shop now, in terms of either investors, mentors. There's so many different, I partner plenty of these options for my candidates, obviously. So there are, and so do your due diligence, make sure it's somebody that you trust, that knows what they're talking about. We're not lawyers, we are recruiters, like you say. And then the second part is absolutely invest in a non-exec director or a business mentor or coach. I think you can't know everything about everything. Nobody does. But these people, again, have been there and done it. And choose your non-exec really carefully. It needs to be somebody that's compatible, likable, somebody that's achieved what you're looking to achieve and that you want to learn from.
Yeah, I mean, it's I still confessions of an MD. I still sometimes look at my balance sheet and I struggle to remember what does that line mean again? Like, what's that like? Or look at my end of year accounts and I go, oh God, like I'm going to have to really embarrassingly go and ask, like, explain to me what this is again. And like, people don't want to admit that stuff, but how, as a recruiter with 5, 8, 10 years experience, whatever it is, when you set up, can you suddenly work your way around that and understand those differences? And you have to have that relationship with someone or different people, where you can ask and they can tell you, and it's okay. It's okay to ask those silly questions. And I still ask those today many times, probably to the annoyance of the people that I ask. But anyway.
Not at all. And I think, this is where the expectation on what an MD actually does, or the owner of a business actually does. And we're talking, I guess, owner managed business, corporate, and that's the distinct difference here, is that we do have to wear so many different hats. So you can't possibly know everything. We are going to come on to this. You're not going to know everything there is to know about technology. You're not going to know everything there is to know about marketing and social media. You're not going to know everything there is to know about accountancy and legal. That our role is to have the foresight and the vision, and to have the strategy, and to get people in the place that know those things and pull it all together. Yeah. So I think it's actually really, transparent of you to say that, because we can't know everything about everything.
Yeah, but there are people out there, and I would say, I'm sure you're in this group as well, but there are people out there who are willing to help. If you've helped somebody to hire somebody, or tried to help somebody hire somebody in the last few years that you really liked and resonated with, if they set up on their own and they were looking for an advisor and they called you up, I bet you'd know 3 or 4 people, and you said, look, why don't you just chat this and this? I'll make a few intros for you, because people like you are super well networked and would know the industry really, really well, and you'd be more than happy to help. And I'm not saying you wouldn't have done that pre-pandemic, but I think the exposure of the last 18 months has basically meant that experienced people within our industry, that community has really, really built so much in this last 18 months, and people are willing to share and help, because if you're successful in your business, in some way down the line, that will help me be successful in my business. I don't know how, but it will help the recruitment industry to be a better place.
Well, 100%. That's exactly it. It's some kind of living vicariously through other people's success. That's what I think anybody who is in my position, particularly as a rectorate, that's what we're trying to achieve. It's about improving our industry, and that's why this podcast means the world to me, because I do truly believe that whichever episode you drop in and listen to, hopefully it's this one, otherwise you won't have heard that, you're going to learn something, even if it's just one thing. Now we're going to talk about something quite contrary, given the fact that I recruit recruiters, in that you've talked about, and we talked about it off camera, some of the perils, I would say, of hiring in talent. Some people have had experience, some people haven't. And you look at the people that you're bringing into your business over a period of time, and, recruitment has got a notorious reputation for being a bit of a leaky ship. I don't know what the latest figures of attrition are. Certainly it would be a little bit false anyway because of furlough, I guess. But pre-pandemic, it was always relatively high. And, you've not been immune to that either. So just talk us through some of your experiences as a business owner of some of the, you don't need to obviously do not mention names, but some of the challenges of trying to get the right talent through the door and keeping hold of the ones that you want and not losing the ones that you don't want to lose.
Okay. So the first, even before you do that, when you go for a period of time of hiring, I think the first thing you have to do before you start thinking about what you're going to do moving forwards is you have to look backwards. So you have to look at everyone that you've hired and go back through the different businesses that you've kind of worked for and analyze how truly successful were they and how are you measuring their success. If you're a really kind of numbersy person who's actually just about profit and margin and numbers, you want to analyze like what you were paying them, what did they bill, what was your ROI there. If it's more about what business did they bring in, how did they manage accounts. So you've got different metrics. And actually then you classify them. So I would classify recruiters into 3 kind of levels. And I might say entry level grads, or people with less than 6 months experience, then people between 6 months and 3 years, and then 3 years plus, and put them into that kind of box, and maybe some broad salary bands, and get into the detail of, okay, where are they on that journey when they left or when they're still with you? And then actually what's been your success rates at various different levels? And then actually, what did you enjoy the most? What did you get the most pleasure out of? Generally speaking, you're going to get the most pleasure out of people who are most successful and who are still with you and probably still can bear the sight of you. So So I think that then should start to frame what you want to focus on and what you want to do for the future. I certainly have kind of played around with that and really felt I kind of honed it about 18 months, 2 years ago, is really what the right kind of thing was for us as a business. And it was predominantly the graduate model with a couple of experienced hires dotted in, and actually some apprentices as well coming in through, you know, not just grads, because there's many amazing people out there who haven't chosen to go to university. So I think there is a big pool of people in there that are great opportunities for hires. And then I always start, personally, I always start with, do I like them?
Yeah.
Like, and I know that sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I spend 10, 11, 12 hours a day in the office sometimes. I don't want 25% of the office to be people who I think are knobs and who I don't really want to spend any time with. Like, you know, could have chosen a better word there. But honestly, and that then goes for like when you go on a, something social, you go for a few beers, or you go and do an event, you go and do something fun. Again, I'd hate to be in that position where there's a couple of people that I don't want to get caught in a conversation with. I think that one of the joys of being an owner of a recruitment company is you get to choose the people that you work with, and hopefully they're people you're going to like. They don't all have to be like you, but you want to enjoy their company when you spend time with them. So I start there, and then I move on to the kind of the values. We've got very, very specific values in our business, which is the acronym DONE. So drive, own, nurture, and enjoy. And then so we think about that in the first interview. And then if they match those attributes, generally speaking, we'll then just put them through a kind of a slightly more rigorous kind of second stage and make a call. But I think getting that first bit right, knowing what kind of model you want and what kind of person you want, everything else then after that is about how you treat them when they're in the company. Actually, there's no kind of silver bullet to making sure you absolutely nail it with the right kind of person and their background and all that kind of stuff. To me, once they're in the door, it's 95% of it is down to you, and down to how you manage them, how you develop them, how you coach them, what kind of an environment you put them into.
Definitely. I mean, there's 2 points there that I'll pick up on, which is the likability factor is, for me, that it's the most untalked about thing in interview processes, because you can have, obviously in my job particularly, but you could be interviewing marketing or developers, it doesn't matter. And if you don't like somebody, why would you want to work with them? Why would they want to work with you? So I do think compatibility and likability is a really important part. And I'm very mindful that, we do all have unconscious bias. So it's not just about someone looking the part or sounding the part. They've got to be somebody that you do not just what you would want to go and shoot a beer with, but is this person somebody that matches the values? So I think it's actually a really important point that you have made there. And I do genuinely think that from the sort of the way that you've expressed yourself, that you're looking at various different channels, I think is so important. Every market is talent short, and so my second is that just because it's worked previously doesn't mean you're going to get talent from that pool again. So yes, of course, graduate pool, but as a parent, it's very punitive to send your children to this. Is there a return on investment on doing that? So actually an apprenticeship route, even not just someone who's maybe left school, gone and worked in hospitality, had a terrible couple of years, they've not given up, they've gone and done something else. I think be open-minded on backgrounds of people, because I do think that attitude and mindset goes a long, long way, as opposed to someone's educational journey, because not everybody fits into those boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I completely take the point around unconscious bias, but actually I think it's important not to. Unconscious bias isn't about let's not kind of get it away from actually the rapport that you build with someone. It's not because they went to the same university as you, or if you're like me, you like your sport, etc., etc. We've got loads of people who have worked here and who currently work here, no interest at all in those things. So it's actually about do they have, for me, do they have something about them? Can they carry a conversation? Have they got some interesting stories to tell? And it's actually not just about being super serious and yeah, you hopefully you can tell from this, I'm not the most serious of MDs as well. It's not all about, business, business, business. There has to be, from a personal perspective, that's not going to be the same for everyone. But I say, especially for new MDs or new recruitment company owners, people in those first couple of years, really trying to nail it. Think I should really hire from this big company or that or whatever it is. Honestly, really, really liking the person is where it should start.
Yeah.
For me personally.
Well, it is, and generally, and so what are your thoughts on, because I partner with plenty of mainly SMEs, to be honest with you. I do have a few corporate clients, but mainly SMEs, and sometimes the MDs don't get involved in the interview process, and I often think, well, that's a shame, because ultimately you're the glue that's bringing all the culture together.
Yeah, no, I do all. So we start with a 15 to 20-minute phone screen, and I do those. So I do the very, very start of the process. So I always engage people on email first of all, and try and have some kind of email exchange, like 3 or 4, 5 emails back. Try and get them to give me availability, and then see when they can kind of do and when they can, when they can make it, so that I can understand what their email communication is like. Just to get a bit of a feel for them. Then we book in a time, and I ask for them to call me. So are they calling me on time? Are they ready for the call? Are they prepared? How have they prepared?
Yeah.
I try and just get, like, with the best will in the world, I try and get them to really, really like me as well, and to like what we stand for, and have a bit of a laugh with them, and start there, right? And then I introduce them to my commercial director or one of my hiring managers on email, and again let them run through the process of organizing it that way, and let them be proactive in terms of the process of organizing things. And then sometimes I come in at the end for the final stage interview, or sometimes I don't need to.
I love that process, David. I think I love the start of it. I think that's really important, because I agree with you. Someone can be verbally very strong, but actually, if they are going to be a recruiter of anything, they're going to have to communicate with clients and candidates. So I think that's really important. And I love the fact that you are at the start. I think that's, I'm possibly going to use this as a benchmark. I hope you haven't copyrighted this. But I think it's really good. I often say that, there are key points of commitment. Do the call on time, do the follow-up when they're supposed to. These are, to me, that's just good manners, by the way. And I have really high expectations. So I'm the conduit between, obviously, the candidate and the client, as everybody is, but obviously dealing with the recruiter. So I really like what you've just said there. I think it's simple, effective.
So my bet is, if you ask your listenership, your recruitment owner MD listenership, what's their biggest priority right now, I think 70% would say hiring and hiring talent. And then you say, what point do you come into the recruitment process? And they say at the final stage, and say, oh, okay, right. So is that how you manage it? If you were kind of from, managing a search for a client, is that what you do? You get, you kind of like, I don't understand why the MD isn't front and center as the first person in the recruitment process, making an early decision and helping that person is still, to my mind, going to be able to sell the journey in the best way. Yeah, sure, it might take a bit more time and you might have to spend more time doing it, but it's going to get you, if it's your biggest priority in your business, why is it not the thing you're spending the most amount of time on?
Yeah. I'm going to contradict you. I would say it's 100% of recruitment priority, not 50%, and that's no exaggeration. And I hope it stays like that, because if it's like that, we're all doing okay. That's what I always say. No, I agree with you totally. And I think, it's where you put it on the priority. And we all have busy schedules. This isn't about, taking time where you don't need to, but I think you're right, 15 minutes. It's a really simple strategy. So I think that's definitely going to be a huge learn for a lot of our listeners who might just look in to the current process and how many candidates are you losing to your competitors, how many people are you putting through, and you've got your leader, your people, your managers and your team leaders going, actually, why were you interviewing this person? So I think it's a really important part of it. So if we were to turn the clock back and you were at the start of your journey as MD of, well, let's say Vertical Advantage, because obviously Nurture Talent relatively new, 2021, what would the 3 key things be that you would have as your sort of key advice points to anybody that's thinking of starting out?
Okay, so the first one that immediately springs to mind is I opened a Leicester office that I never should have opened. And the reason why I opened it is, and lots of people see this, is I had a great guy working for me in London, and he was from Leicester, and he wanted to move back to Leicester to be closer to his family. And we thought, right, well, Leicester is just over an hour from London. It's good opportunities. It's that kind of part of the world. There's a good kind of FMCG community up there. Midlands has got some, so we'll set up an office. And we ended up over a 2-year period coming in and building that office to 5 or 6 people. Concurrently, we built London to 5 or 6, and I was spending 3 or 4 nights, kind of every two nights every couple of weeks up in Leicester, and so on and so forth. And I brought in, at the back end of 2016, I brought in a non-exec, because I was a bit frustrated. We were doing well, but we weren't as far ahead as I'd hoped we would be at that time. And he looked at it over a period of a couple of months. And he said, I don't understand what the purpose of the Leicester office is. I don't understand why you're there. Don't understand, it's not generating huge amounts of revenue, etc. And it still goes today that the guy I had up there was great. And actually one of the people that we brought in when we closed that office became our operations manager remotely from there. She was lovely and she was great. She was coming towards the end of her career, and it was the last role that she wanted, but we couldn't hire the level of talent there that we wanted to be in London. And basically the non-exec advice is, look at the opportunity cost of the money that you're spending up there. Sometimes you're making a bit of a profit, sometimes you're making a loss. It's not generating. Take that money out of there, spend it in London, and grow a business and a culture in the London office, and make it more central. And that's what you really, really should do. So just because you've got a brilliant person that you don't want to lose doesn't mean you should build necessarily an office around them. Now, today, you can obviously have them working remotely from anywhere in the world if you trust them, so things have evolved. But that guy never had aspirations to just be a one-man, just sitting in his back bedroom working for us. And actually, after we closed the office, I helped him with setting up his own business. We're still really, really good friends. He's actually moved to New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
I went to his wedding. We're good mates. But I should have just let him go. I should have just let him go at that kind of a time, or we should have come to some kind of arrangement. So that's the first one, and that would be what it is. I think the second one, and maybe we'll talk on this a little bit more, is investment. And investment, what I'm talking about is investment in technology.
Okay.
And investment in, there are loads and loads of different types of, it's unbelievable.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. And actually you get lost in spending all your time doing demos and like taking a demo for the sake of taking a demo, because you want to get someone off from pestering you and nagging you on certain different things. So I think you've got to get yourself. So I think you've got to have, when you're thinking about that and technology, you've got to have a really, really strict criteria for what problem you're trying to solve. Yes. Not just trying to invest in something because it's, it's been sold in really well. It looks like a really, really cool piece of kit. Okay. And I can tell you today in our business, we've got a problem with getting our more junior consultants to be more confident about posting content and what content that they kind of post on LinkedIn and whatever it is. So if I had a piece of technology that could really, really help and encourage them, bring them ideas for social media content that they could use and that they could blend into kind of posting, and then that it could multi-post across different kind of formats, and they could tag people, etc., with LinkedIn and whatever it is, that would be an amazing piece of technology, because that would help me to solve a problem that we've got in our business today. But I would have to go and seek that. I'd have to go and find out where that kind of is, as opposed to, let's take like video interviewing. Our clients actually, a lot of big in-house talent teams, they don't really need like the kind of us to do this kind of visual kind of interview. And if they did, we could probably do it on a Zoom, we could record it, and we could send it to them. Yeah. So I don't need to necessarily spend money on that in vertical advantage. So you're kind of thinking about what is important for your business, and then due diligence coming after that. And actually the mistakes that I've made is getting sold something that actually I didn't need, but it looked great and I thought it was really, really cool. And then, or not doing the due diligence afterwards, not asking for case studies, not asking for the mobile numbers of 3 people who've used it and find it really, really relevant and stuff. And again, the whole community piece of the last 18 months meant you can find people who can give you advanced opinion one way or the other.
Without a shadow of a
So that's that. And I think that number 3, I think this is a bit more, and I'd be interested to see what your opinion is on this. I used to plan 12 to 36 months in advance. So I'd have a 3-year plan that I'd evolve and change, and then I'd have a 12-month budget. And I've stopped doing that because there's so many booms and slumps and cycles, and actually you just end up beating yourself up about not achieving a certain thing that you want to achieve, whatever it is. And actually, if you do achieve what you want to achieve, you still got the next thing that you're looking after anyway. So I've stopped doing that, and I've just started budgeting in 6-month periods.
Okay.
So setting a budget on a 6-month basis, the month before, and signing off the week before you enter that period. So we've just done it last week for this second half of our financial year coming up. We've looked at the invoicing that's coming through. We've looked at our current pipeline. We've looked at the performance of our recruiters. We've looked at who we're looking to hire, and we've dotted in the numbers across. And we've worked out that, 25% of our invoices invoice in the same month, 30% invoice the month after, and then the majority are 3 months after, because we're placing people on 3-month notice periods. And we've worked the metrics, and we've run kind of to what the numbers are. And it grounds us in reality of what we truly, truly expect. And if we don't hit those numbers, it's really, really easy to look back and say why we didn't hit them.
Yeah.
And then we learn and we build again.
Yeah.
If you're doing it over 12 months or longer, you'll forget what happened in October 2018 and what's the bit that's pissing you off about why you didn't hit a number or anything like that. And also, then when you're engaging a senior leadership team, they can really, really buy into a bonus based on a 6-month period and profitability and those kind of things. So that's really, really important, I think.
Yeah, and I think that, would you have done that pre-COVID? Would you have even thought about doing that?
Yeah. No, to be honest, I probably started doing that in about 2018, 2019. But the previous business that so the business that I set up with Hamilton Bradshaw, they were all about 12-month forecasts.
Okay.
And there'd always be something that would happen in the 12 months that would put it out. Yeah, exactly. Too many variables. And you're always planning for success, and it's always rose tinted glasses, and we're gonna hire 10 people, and they're all gonna be doing 150K in year one, and da 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 da. And of course, some do and some don't, and blah, blah, blah. So
I think if you're selling bread, it's probably a lot easier to forecast a year, 3 years ahead. If you're dealing with human beings, it is a lot harder. So my opinion on it is this: I would say you're quite rare in being so open about that. And admitting that it's really hard to financially forecast beyond even 3 months, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it's sensible to look 6 months ahead. I still look a year ahead, but I work quarter by quarter, actually. Generally speaking, recruiters are on a month's notice. It's very rare you get someone on 3, thank God.
Yeah.
But I understand why you've done that, and I think more MDs would probably be sat here thinking you're probably right. When obviously I speak to other business owners and we look at their forecasts for headcount, etc., that's maybe why they're under so much pressure to try and get more people in than they can realistically get. When that's me being candid as a rec to rec, because they've forecast a year, 2, 3 years ahead. And I think if the last 18 months hasn't taught people anything, it's that we actually can't predict. And I think there's just so many variables. I think it possibly makes you a much more nimble business. I like that you've mentioned the point about your senior leadership team with regards to profit. I think, I'm seeing a shift. It's not a trend yet because there's far too few people doing it, but looking at things like profit share to really engage not just their leadership team, but actually their employees as well. I think it will then shift the mindset of, just transactional recruiters just trying to smash in a fee and get commission. Actually think a 6-month profit target. I think it gives them a lot more empowerment on agreeing better fees, because I can't imagine any recruiter listening to this isn't looking at their average fee thinking I should be charging more, and you should be charging more if you're good at what. Simple as that. So I love that. I'm so glad I asked all those points of you. I will just talk to you off camera about your second point, because obviously Hoxo Media can solve your problem, because that's exactly what the Branding Academy does. That's exactly what it does. So we will talk off camera.
No. And I am aware of Sean and those guys, and we're connected. And I've looked at a couple of the podcasts there, and again, to be honest, I'm probably looking at trying to balance there some cost versus some ROI, and what can we do and what can we achieve ourselves. But actually, as what they do, and I think the results that the communities that I'm in that talk about their business, the ROI can be phenomenal. I think it's the confidence at really, really junior, more graduate kind of first year of recruitment. How can they speak with authority when they don't necessarily have the confidence that they're an expert in marketplaces or they're an expert in supply chain planning? How do you kind of build that? So I think that's an interesting one. But yeah, I agree. Sorry, I've got a question for you, if that's all right.
Yeah.
A few questions for you. What do you think the average, this is totally off topic, what do you think the average referral fee internally is for recruitment businesses for when people recommend their friends to come and work for the company?
I haven't actually done any genuine mathematical analysis of this.
Just off the top of your head, what do you think it is?
Probably about 1,500 quid.
Okay. And what do you think the average rec to rec fee is?
Minimum 20%.
Right. So let's say the average recruiter gets hired at 35k. Let's say, for example, so that's $7,000.
Yeah.
And how much do you think that recruitment company owners say some of our best people have come as referrals from some of our good people that we know?
Oh, loads. Absolutely. It's always going to be my biggest competitor, and that's fine with me. And I always say that. So
that's a pretty big disparity, isn't it? $7,000 versus $1,500.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I think it's just a thought, and it's something I'm looking at the minute, is we've got some really, really good referrers in our business. And actually, we probably should be looking to scale our referral fees as people refer more and kind of bring people in, because actually you incentivize those people to do it more. I don't want to talk up people being competitors to you, but as you said, you encourage it and you think it's a good thing. I think there's a disparity in company owners looking at that, and I'm guilty of it myself. And it's something I think in the current market, again, what's your biggest priority? Hiring. Who are your best advocates of your business? Your own people.
I agree with you.
Incentivize them.
Incentivize your internal. If you're not looking at actually investing in a full-time internal hirer, which I think talent acquisition is possibly going to be a big growth market next year again for recruitment. It's what happened in 2010, incidentally, after we had to grow after the recession. I think that you make a really valid point, and ironically, that is actually exactly the candid conversation I have with clients, managing expectations, that I'm all for healthy competition. And ultimately, any recruiter, what do? We plug in our network. My network is unique to me, Leisha Holmes at Key Recruitment. Yep. That's not going to be unique to David Jenkins at Vertical Advantage. So that's why it's important to actually have both. I'm not here to replace your internal scheme, and your internal scheme will never replace a potentially exclusive candidate that comes through rec to rec. So I think it's actually a really good question you've asked me, and I'm so glad you have. Definitely look at it. Definitely, you're dealing with salespeople, incentivize them. Oh, thank you so much. This has been really insightful, and I've loved your candor. I think there's been some incredible learns for people along the way, and you've done it with absolute aplomb and a big smile on your face. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks a million for the time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Talk to you soon.